Persecution, intimidation. In fact, just yesterday, our offices were invaded. We don't know for what reason. Of course, they wanted to take some information. The reason why probably they want to take information from us is because they wanted to try and destroy the evidence that we have in terms of our parallel voter tabulation, which we have collected across the whole country. Unfortunately, we have our backups, so they did not take everything. We already have that information stored, which is going to be very useful for the veracity of what we are alleging. I must also underscore that most of our leaders have been visited, some have been threatened in the various provinces on account of them having participated in an election. We are not a militia, we are not a military organization, we are a democratic organization. We do not believe in violence, we do not believe in anarchy, we do not believe in use of weapons of war against anyone. And this is why we find it very difficult that the thank you we are getting for being peaceful, the thank you we are getting for being law-abiding is a thank you of bullets, is a thank you of guns, is a thank you of bombs, is a thank you of grenades, is a thank you of tanks on the streets, clearly indicating that our colleagues in ZANU-PF have panicked because they were defeated in this election. They are not confident of the citizens. This is why they can fire live ammunition on citizens who are going about doing their own things. And this is a very serious issue we have to take up, not just with ZANU-PF, but to also take up with the government and, of course, to take it to international platforms. So I just thought that I needed to highlight this because this is strange times. You don't give bullets, tanks, guns to those who have voted for you. You give celebration and jubilation. But if you go around the country, you will find that there is no jubilation, there is no celebration. If anything, today is a day of mourning. Mourning over democracy. It is a black day because we are seeing a repeat of what we saw during the yesteryear regime. Deprivation of people's will, rigging of the will of the people, manipulating the results, bastardizing the outcome of the elections, and in a way trying to negate what people fight for. A coup against the will of the people. People voted overwhelmingly. And I must say, I want to thank Zimbabweans for being very peaceful. I want to thank Zimbabweans for their patience. I want to thank Zimbabweans for being tolerant. You stood in the queues, you waited for a long time, professionals, young people, women. Thank you, Zimbabwe. You have done fantastically well. It's not easy. Under circumstances of rigging, circumstances of machinations, we have managed to score over 2 million votes, even by their own bastardized tally. We have done exceptionally well. Thank you, Zimbabwe. You are exceptional. You are teaching the world that it is possible to be democratic. We want to thank you as we go through this very difficult time. I must also emphasize that we want to thank our journalists. Yes, in the international community, thank you. You have shown that you are able to show us the possibility of another world. You have covered us so well in this election. Thank you very much for your objectivity. We appreciate our various observer missions. Thank you also for standing with the people of Zimbabwe. We want to thank you for what you have done. Yes, there's been disappointment with certain of the reports that would want to label or conclude that this election was free and fair, when we actually feel that there's any tinctures of free and fair election are evidently absent. And this is why at this particular moment in time, I want to underscore that we have a very serious challenge in this country. We are facing a divided nation. We are facing a betrayed nation. We are facing a divided people. And we are also facing a brutalized people. And this is why I think it's important that in the context of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission declaration of Mr. Mnangagwa as having won the 2018 presidential election yesterday is such a regrettable decision. And I must say that Mr. Mnangagwa did not win the election in this country. The election in this country was won by the MDC Alliance presidential candidate. And we won that election emphatically. We have our tally, which tally we are ready to give those who want to see the tally. We have engaged ZEC. We want to give them the tallies. But of course, they didn't want even to listen to us. They actually misled our chief election agent, Mr. Komich, to say that we are going to have a verification of the statistics before we announce the results. He was kept on waiting in a room, only to be told that the results were already being announced when they were almost a quarter way into announcing the result. Something that we do not take lightly, because in terms of the law, we are supposed to have the verification of the statistics. That verification was not done. It was done nicodemously, nocturnally, at night, behind curtains, and of course in cahoots with ZANU-PF. And we take this as a serious issue. It is very telling, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, that the election result itself was announced in the dead of the night, when we were having people being beaten up in the high-density suburbs. What happened in Chitungwiza is deplorable. People were being beaten up. Just this morning, I received news that one of the victims I visited yesterday died because he went for a surgery. He had a bullet through his heart, and they thought that they were going to be able to rescue his life. Unfortunately, he passed on, increasing again the number of people who died. There's been an attempt to try and link the MDC Alliance to the disturbances that happened in the city center. We have nothing to do with that. We deplore violence. This is why we have encouraged citizens, and we are encouraging citizens to make sure that you are calm, to make sure that you are maintaining peace, but to remain vigilant to protect your vote as we engage and continue to engage in terms of the direction that we are going to take. I must also indicate that there has been a misunderstanding that has characterized this election. As far as we are concerned, this election as a presidential result is fraudulent, illegal, illegitimate, and characterized by serious credibility gaps and some serious legitimacy issues that we feel must be raised. We must place it on record without equivocation that we won this election, and that because we won this election, we are already ready to form the next government, subject to the processes that we are going to pursue in terms of protecting the will of the people. The will of the people is not in the declaration by Chigumba. The will of the people is not in the declaration by ZEC. The will of the people is in the declaration by the voter at a polling station where people voted. And that is what we are going to honor. We will not honor something that is null and void like the declaration that was done by Chigumba. So we will seek to negate and nullify that illegality for what it is, and we will pursue all the necessary measures to be able to do that. I must say also the bar of an acceptable election result will not be lowered just to accommodate the expediencies that have nothing to do with honoring the people in terms of the law and in terms of their will. Acceptance of an election and the result is a function of the integrity of the result itself and the transparency of the process. You are aware that we raise issues around the process, we raise issues around the outcome, and we continue to raise these issues. We have raised this in the context of, we have raised it in the context of our parliamentary election. We are going to be challenging a number of electoral results. We have summoned our members of parliament. They've already given us a report of where certain illegalities, malpractices were done. And we are going to be pursuing this matter to make sure that we get to the logical conclusion. We actually got a majority. Had it not been for the manipulation in the parliamentary election, we did exceptionally well. You will see on the tally in the parliament once we begin to unpack some of the problems that we have seen. The alliance structures are currently working round the clock with the legal teams, political and diplomatic and data experts to roll out a robust program of action to ensure that we protect the will of the people. We have the capacity, and that capacity is going to be rolled out. We want to advise Mr. Mnangagwa that if he is actually a man of integrity, as he's claiming to be, if he's a born again in terms of democracy, if he's a new Democrat on the block, let him honor his promise and pledge for a free and fair election and resist and reject accepting the result that is not in favor of him. He knows the result. He got a report of the result and that he had lost the election on Monday. He must be honest and sincere, and he must just accept to give way to the new order the people voted for. He must allow this young man to do his job, which I was elected by the people of Zimbabwe to do. He must not accept corrupted results which are meant to disadvantage the nation, but advantage a particular elite that seeks to subvert the will of the people. So I hope that Mr. Mnangagwa is going to be open for business the business of transparency, the business of accountability, the business of making sure that we have a proper election result in this country. I must say that in the meantime, there are things that we have noted that are so particularly important. Even if we are to go to court, we know that our courts have had problems in the past. But even if we are to go to court, we have so much evidence just to show how this election was rigged. In fact, they did not do a good job. Just a 0.8 requires us to just raise 30,000 votes of those that they actually inflated. And they've inflated. Just look at Harare. They deflated our figures by close to about 20,000. And they inflated Mr. Mnangagwa's votes. This is why they didn't want to go to the constituents by constituents announcement. But they wanted to go to the block provincial announcement. And we're going to be challenging that. There is considerable eyewitness video evidence that is suggested that certain ballot boxes, of which ZEC is the custodian, were in an open track accompanied by polling officers or the police. And that evidence is going to be provided at the appropriate time. In addition, these videos expose the fact that these ballot boxes were not sealed and not tamper-proof. Further, the ballot boxes did not have V11 forms, which should be attached. In fact, the V11 forms have been altered. Some of them have actually been produced in several forms, and we are going to raise this. Throughout this election, as you know, we have had problems with ZEC, which has proved to be opaque, partisan, arrogant, obstinate, and conflicted in favor of ZANU-PF. And the BS, if not the hidden hand of a third force, which we are investigating. This has been noted in our preliminary report and even the preliminary reports of certain credible observer missions. We must say that even in the face of the machinations by ZEC to try and pit Mr. Mnangagwa alphabetically advantaged, when he didn't have any advantage of that sort, they have again seen that this has not worked, and this is why we managed to beat him in an election. The reliability of our information provided by ZEC itself is actually questionable. You know that they have had to announce results that are inverted. For example, in Chegut West, where they had to change upon an electoral court challenge. We have also seen what happened in the newspaper as reported by their own paper, The Herald, that 210,554 people had voted in March Central as of 6 p.m. on election day. This report was published. It has to be juxtaposed with the final results we now hear being announced of 483,423. I can tell you that figures are very malleable with ZEC. They are very, very, very liberal with the movement of figures. And this is why we wanted to make sure that we do the final tally verification, which did not happen. When you reconcile the two reports, there were 272,879 votes, more than the total votes, which were cast in the last hour of voting between 6 and 7 p.m. of the voting day. And then one wonders what this is all about. But it will also be exposed. There was also an issue where you have seen our soldiers who are highly disciplined, who are supposed to do things that are proper, firing live ammunition. We have not heard from government what they have done to make sure that they reprimand or deal with these culprits who caused the loss of lives. What we are hearing is an accusation on the MDC Alliance. The last time I checked, we have not been sworn in to be the commanders-in-chief. We do not command the military force. We are yet to, but we are not yet there. And this is why we want those who are in charge in the interim, the outgoing government, the outgoing President Mnangagwa, to make sure that he owns up on those who killed innocent citizens. And he apologizes to the people, but he compensates the families of those people who actually perished. Instead of saying it was the MDC Alliance, I hear that they were forcing one of the relatives to say, no, it was a knife, a stab by a knife. When it is clear that it's a gunshot. They want to try and run away from some of these problems. Don't worry, we are covered by the Holy Ghost.
Amen.
And we thank God for this protection. Thank you very much. Again, as has been noted by the credible observer mission, the presidential vote was counted first. And this is why I just want to articulate this point. A lot of people are saying, where are you getting the votes? The votes are known by the ordinary people. Because each time we vote in the constituencies, The first vote to be counted through the V23 at constituency level upon the V11s, which are the polling station-based result, is the presidential election. And it has to be a presidential election for ED, in our case, for NC. We managed to win in the majority of constituencies where our MPs did not do well because of rigging. Of course, our own, they tried to rig, but we did very well because there's been a sweeping and overwhelming call for change. So that must be understood. We also want to indicate that, as has been noted by most of the observer missions, the presidential vote had been counted first, was supposed to be announced first at constituency level. We know the results. We did the tallying. Our MPs know the result. Our agents know the result. There's no reason why Zeki has been doing this opaque thing. Just yesterday, they misled our chief election agent, and this is why he had to do something that is uncharacteristic of him. I saw him taking over the chair's position and announcing his position. But congratulations for standing our ground. We really appreciate that, because we want to defend our vote, and we must do things that are consistent with the law. We are lawful people. We honor the law. The Constitution guarantees us the right to peaceful protest if we are not happy. To all intents and purposes, this will and this right is going to be pursued. We are going to subvert all unconstitutional tendencies. We don't want violence. We don't accept violence. Any person who is violent is not part of us. Yeah. But we know that ZANU-PF would plant people who are then masquerading as MDC Alliance as a way to justify a crackdown on the opposition, as a just way to try and justify their running away from a legitimate election. We want to deal with this, and it shall be dealt with in a proper manner. As a way of concluding, I must say that we have had 5 fundamental challenges. The first one being the issue of unverified votes being announced to members of the press and to the country. It's very clear that the law requires that all results of an election be verified by the agents before the results are issued out by ZEC. Chigumba would not listen. Very arrogant, not willing to cooperate, not understanding that this election is about citizens. This election is about the political stakeholders, us the political parties. And that issue has to be taken to its logical conclusion. The ZEC chairperson cannot and was not supposed to announce what she wants or what she has been whispered in the ear by certain of the third force members, whom we know. And we know that they have been working with Chigumba and others to try and subvert this election. We have that evidence as and when it is required. Our collected results indicate that we won significantly. We actually have a majority vote of over 2.3 million ahead of Mnangagwa. It is actually Mnangagwa who did not reach the 2 million mark, as we would then show. Our percentage was actually 56%. By the evidence they have, their tally was almost 44%. And we are very clear that if they are challenging the veracity of our report, let's go to the tallying, let's go to the V11 forms, because these results were announced at a constituency level. And you can see that when they announce at night, they are giving you a night result. When they are announcing at night, they want to give you a darkness result, not the result that you voted for. And this is what we are telling Zimbabweans. The second one is their poorly done rigging. Mr. Mugabe was at least sophisticated, as a fraudster. But this fraudster is so pedestrian, The numbers that they even presented do not even add up. I suppose they borrowed from my brother Mnangagwa, who said 10 plus 4 equals to 40. Like I told you, Harare is a good example of where the numbers that were given to a ZANU-PF candidate, presidential candidate Mr. Mnangagwa, were more than what is on the V23 forms, as they indicate. It's common cause. It can be proved. More than 20,000 votes that were added to ZANU-PF in Harare were not for Mr. Mnangagwa. In Manicaland, in the Midlands, we've had to see more votes than the registered voters. And their problem is that we had a maximum number of voters per polling station, which was supposed to be 1,000. And you know that when you play around with these things, you end up massaging and romancing the result beyond the limits of what is known and what is common. And this is what they did. Voter turnout discrepancies are common cause. It's senseless that you would say that the turnout at parliamentary level was 75%. ZEG is now reporting an 85% turnout for the presidential. Fair and fine. It might be that people did not vote for the parliament, but then you must show and reveal that in the parliamentary election. What happened to the discrepancy of those 10% votes? Were they spoiled? What then happened to those votes? So that there's consistency, or did they return them without voting? So that we will then appreciate in terms of the election. Yes, what is the way forward? We are not accepting fake results. We are not accepting this fiction. We want a proper result to be announced. We will pursue all means necessary, legal and constitutional, to make sure that we protect the people's vote. The people have voted, they have cheated. The people have won, they are subverting that win. We will not allow it, and we will not accept. Mr. Mnangagwa said, may you remember your liberation vow and commitment to the liberation ethos of one man, one vote. Respect the people. Do not usurp power. Do not sit on the throne of power without those who empower you, the citizens. They do not believe in you, they believe in us. You can see even by the vote tally, even by ZEC itself, the nation is divided. We have all the urban centers. We have all the councils. But we have even gone further. We have made significant inroads in the rural areas. We actually beat Mr. Mnangagwa in Manicaland. We beat Mr. Mnangagwa in most of the Mashonaland provinces. In fact, we're almost tied in our result. In their result, they lowered our result, which causes a big problem. So we are the majority party in this country. We are the part that should form the government in this country. This one can't form the government. And this is why we are going to make sure that we pursue all legal and constitutional routes that are there to pursue that. To the international community, we are asking you to help Zimbabweans clearly have a break with the past. Move away from the old ways of rigged elections so that we have a gateway to a new beginning, a gateway of free and fair elections. Please help us to be liberated from the claws and manacles of this dictatorship, of this oppressive regime. We can only do it with your support, with your solidarity. We are not asking for support to the MDC. We are asking for a support to the credentials of democracy, the norms and values and standards of free and fair elections. We as MDC Alliance have never resorted to arms of war, yet we have a lot of capacity to do so. But we do not, and we will never. We do not believe in violence. We have said our instruments are instruments of peace. Our instruments are instruments of amity. This is why we participate in elections, in peaceful demonstrations. This is why we abhor violent demonstrations, such as the one we saw some few days ago. To the people of Zimbabwe, wait for your moment. The celebration is coming. Be assured. Be assured.